Hey, everybody. Just to let you know, this podcast may contain some adult or possibly offensive language.
No nudity, though.
Unless you're thinking about naked people.
I was like, Dad, I have a job with Spike Lee.
Yeah.
What did he say?
And he was like, so you're not going to become a doctor, eh? I was like, no, it's this Spike. Is he going to put you in film to be doctor, eh? I was like, no.
One more.
Is that right? You're getting no money from me.
Hey, yo-yo-yos and yo-yo-yosers.
Stretch, you haven't this season quite given them the proper 90s yo-yo-yo signature.
I kind of feel like it's time to move on from that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What's up, everybody? This is Stretch Armstrong.
And my name is Bobbito Garcia, a.k.a. Cool Bob Love. Together, we are the host of
What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito.
Wow, that was perfect, Stretchy.
Harmonize.
Today, we have a phenomenal guest. I am blown away by her accomplishments already. Let me just run down a couple of them for you. Top 40 Executives Under 40 by Billboard Magazine. Most Exciting Personality in Advertising by Adweek.
She is the former head of music and entertainment at PepsiCo. She was the marketing director for Apple Music, was the former chief brand officer at a little company known as Uber. And she is currently the chief marketing officer, CMO, at Endeavor Entertainment.
Her responsibilities are great, and her name is Bozoma St. John.
In addition to having just the boss-ass resume of all time, she's also had a really fascinating life story, and she has occupied the space as an executive in a very unique and powerful way, and we're going to get into that with her.
I would say groundbreaking, really.
Pioneering?
Yeah. I mean, she is carving her own path.
Breaking the mold.
Bozoma St. John coming up.
We'd like to say a quick thank you and share a message from one of our sponsors, Sony Music Latin, presenting Grammy Award-winning artist Ile, a Puerto Rican singer and composer known for her work with Calle 13. Her debut album, Inevitable, garnered her a Best New Artist nomination at the Latin Grammys. It also won the award for the Best Latin Rock, Urban, or Alternative Album at the 60th Annual Grammy Awards. Her new single and video, titled Odio, is available everywhere now.
Some things were meant for each other. Fries and milkshakes, selfies and duckface. And now, what's good with Stretch and Bobbito and Spotify? Yes, the same app that has millions of songs now also has thousands of podcasts.
On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite shows and discover new ones. To subscribe to ours, search for What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito, tap follow, and get every new episode delivered to you.
Podcasts on Spotify. They're streaming right now. And now.
I'm Felix Contreras. This week on Alt Latino, El Tiny. We're going to dig into the Tiny Desk concert archives and play some of the Latin music artists who have stood behind Bob Boilen's desk and serenaded us. Don't miss El Tiny on the next Alt Latino. Check it out.
You rolled up here dolo? Outside of the film.
Oh, no. I have 1,000 people following me all the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm an entourage. Don't get it confused. Makeup is downstairs. Okay.
The voice you just heard is the voice of someone that we've been really looking forward to sitting with. It's the one and only Bozoma St. John. Yeah. Welcome to What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito.
Thank you. Woo!
Ow!
I'm so excited.
Yes. Well, looking at your Instagram feed, you
Danger.
see a woman who doesn't really look like the typical executive.
Word up.
Deliberately.
Yeah. So if you could just get into that a little bit, you're incredibly radiant and you're impossible to miss. I mean, you're stunning.
Really?
You wear incredibly colorful clothes. You're very tall. Mm-hmm. You know, this isn't like the typical executive.
Really?
Right.
Maybe it should be.
Well, can you talk about that? Yeah.
You're making it.
Yeah, it should be. Well, I just feel like, when I was younger and starting out, I was looking, to people who I thought were successful and then trying to mold myself after them. But they were a lot of
Like who?
white men in gray suits. Because that's who the CEOs were and the CMOs, and they were all very buttoned up, and no one looked the way that I hoped to look like. Because my idols were fashionistas and musicians and Flojo. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Flojo for real. I mean, it's like even, the way I do my nails, the way I wear my hair, very much patterned after her.
Wait, let me see your nails. Oh.
Pow! The stilettos.
Damn.
These are also weapons. But yeah, I just didn't see anyone that looked the way I wanted to look. And I tried for a while to look like the people that I thought were successful and therefore what I needed to look like. And I was unsuccessful at that. It was just really a disaster. I wasn't interesting. There was, none of my personality came out because I was so busy trying to be something else, and I was really uncomfortable in it. So I spent all my energy trying not to be uncomfortable. What a waste of time.
Was there a day when you're like, you know what?
You're
looking at your closet, like all
Yeah.
these gray suits, and you're like, nah.
True story. I woke up one day, no clean shirt, like zero. And for a second, I thought I could just spray some perfume on something, you know what I mean, and make it work.
What is that, Febreze?
Yeah, you know, well, ain't no Febreze back then, okay? It hadn't been invented yet.
That's called. They call it the French bath.
Yeah, I was like,
French
just,
shower. Excuse me.
yeah, just spritz a little
Sorry,
bit.
French people.
Spray a little something on there, get it clean. But also, black girl makeup. So it wasn't happening. It just looked dirty. So what I had was like this flowery printed shirt that I actually really loved. And I thought, well, if I don't have the white shirt, I'm just going to go with the thing I really love, because if I'm going to get like looked at funny, at least I want to be looked at funny in wearing something I really love. And so I wore that to the office.
Where was this at?
At Pepsi.
Got you.
And listen, people were walking around with like, the khaki with the line down the front,
No doubt.
type situation,
Dockers.
blue button down.
Yeah.
And so no one was walking around in flowery shirt. And I walked in, I got a couple of weird looks, but I felt so great that day. I literally could not go back. Like I just couldn't do it. And by the way, I just think it has also much more psychological impact, that if you're bringing the fullness of who you are superficially, then hopefully you're also doing that emotionally. And at a deeper level, you're also bringing the fullness of yourself, and you're not trying to pretend to be something else either. So maybe that also helps with our corporate environments, and it allows for more diversity, not just of race and gender, but of ideas and experiences and all of that.
Has your presence at these companies engendered that kind of freedom? I mean, do you see that in the office?
I hope so, yeah. I mean, I constantly get that from young women, especially, Actually, the other day, this young man at Endeavor, Nigerian young man, he's an assistant. He's on an assistant desk. And I saw him in the elevator, and he pointed to his ear, and he had like this little earring in it. And he was just like, "I wore this because of you." And I was like, "What? Like really? Like I love that so much." I was like, "That's what I want on my resume, not the companies. I want the resume that says like I made a difference because I was there."
What's your early entrepreneurial endeavors preteen?
Wow, preteen. So I grew up in a house of very strict African parents, from Ghana. They did not understand the concept of chores for money. You know what I mean? They didn't get that.
Or allowance.
No. There was no such thing. You know what I mean? It was like, you are lucky to be alive. You are lucky to live here. You will do your part. You know what I mean? And my mom was also very stereotypically a Ghanaian mother who was raising 4 daughters who believed that they should cook and clean to the best of their ability, Mm-hmm. But my first paying job, I was actually an AT&T operator in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It was my first real job. And most of it was from the U.S. to Mexico, were the calls that I was getting. Mm-hmm. And so I would literally push the buttons to connect those calls. And sometimes I would have to sit on the call and wait to make sure that they reached the person they were getting, because sometimes those calls wouldn't go through properly. And then, you want somebody to lose their money. Yeah. So I would sit and wait to make sure they got the right person.
So you mentioned Colorado Springs.
Yes.
What was junior high like for you?
It was really strange. because before that, I'd lived mostly in Africa and pretty internationally, with like kids who were coming from a lot of different places. I think that's the misconception, about Africa, is that somehow like, people who are there have never seen anything before. They've never seen a white person before in their lives, like it was some sort of strange being. But no, it's very international. And so I was really shocked when I got to Colorado Springs and found out that people didn't have passports, or that had not traveled outside of Colorado. So that was really shocking to me, that people didn't have a concept of anything outside of Colorado Springs, and also really believe the things they saw on TV about Africa, because it was just such a different experience that I had, So the questions I would get about, like, when did you learn how to speak English? And I was like, in my house, we speak foreign languages. Like, or it was like, oh, when was the first time you had clothes? And I was like, shut up. Like it was just so shocking to me. But part of it was also the need to fit in. And so trying to find the points of connection, which, by the way, I feel like has really helped me throughout my life. That it doesn't really matter if somebody doesn't hold the same belief systems as you or doesn't come from the same place that you do. There is going to be some connection. You just have to find it.
What were those connections that you found initially?
Oh, my gosh. So many different things. I didn't know what football was, right? When I came, like football to me was soccer, obviously. And I didn't know that I would fall in love with John Elway, but I really did.
What was it, Denver Broncos quarterback?
Yes, the Broncos. Like, I love football now. Like, the Broncos are my team. There were certain artists that I was unfamiliar with. Obviously, in Ghana, Michael Jackson and everybody else was hot. But, like, Taylor Dane was somebody that I was like, whoa, where does this person come from? You know what I mean? It was all of, those types of things, dance moves and music and what was happening on MTV and the Denver Broncos and, country music, which I also found I actually like too, Garth Brooks, what up? Like...
Bob?
No comment. I saw Spike Lee's new film, Black Klansman.
Yes.
And it was shot it takes place in Colorado Springs. And I wasn't aware that there was KKK in Colorado Springs. Mm-hmm. But at what point did you first cross paths with that sort of like closed-minded, ignorant, sort of mindset?
Well, it was way before Colorado Springs. When I was 6, my father, who was a politician in Ghana, was thrown into political detention when the government was overthrown in a military coup d'etat. And my mom had to escape Ghana with me, my 2 younger sisters, and she was pregnant with my youngest sister. And we came to Washington, D.C. Under political asylum. Unfortunately, it's like for me at 6, going to school, again, you would think that in a city that is so used to diplomats or used to people from international territories that, you would be welcomed with open arms, but that wasn't the case. People had very ignorant things to say and ignorant questions. People would say rude things to my mother. And I was just like, I want to say, who she is? You know what I mean? You don't know who you're talking to. Yeah. And so I was very aware early that people's misconceptions about Blackness or about Africanness was really real, and that it wasn't often based on the truth or based on reality. So by the time I was 12 and by the time I got to Colorado Springs, any of that kind of, activity or harshness or misconception, I was already prepared for. I already knew what was coming.
So you choose Wesleyan in Middletown, Connecticut. I attended there from 84 to 88.
Hey.
I'm wondering, did the quote-unquote diversity university and, the place that probably coined political correctness, is that what drew you to the school?
Well, okay, so it's kind of a complicated question because, little known fact, I was actually born at Wesleyan.
Oh, word up.
Yeah. My dad actually went to Wesleyan. He has a double PhD in ethnomusicology and anthropology at Wesleyan.
Oh, wow.
I decided I was not going to go to Wesleyan because of those reasons, you know? There was just no way. And my dad forced me to go to Alumni Sons and Daughters Weekend at Wes. And yeah, the rest is history. I went and
You caught the bug?
Oh, man. I made friends. I went to Malcolm X's house. I was done. It was finished. I was like, you mean I can live with all black kids and there's no one here to supervise us? I can play spades all day in the hallway? What? Oh, it was over. It was done.
Turn on the Tupac.
Yeah. Oh, listen. Okay, I was so ready. Oh, it was phenomenal.
I heard that I read that you used to throw parties at the
Yes.
X house
Oh
too?
man, that was my jam. Yeah. I threw parties.
What year was this?
Well, I went there in 95 to 99.
How come you didn't bring us up there? What's going on?
I know I should have. You know who I did bring up there though? Again, little known fact, Jay-Z.
Yep.
To Malcolm X house?
To MoCon. Imagine. And there
He
were
performed at
3
MoCon.
people in the audience. It was a disaster.
Okay, you're exaggerating. 3.
No, I'm telling you, man, it was me and like 2 other people. Okay? Okay, maybe a little exaggeration, but it was embarrassing. It was terrible. It was terrible. It's all right though. It was a good experience.
He
I had a
got
good
his
time.
check.
Yes.
You moved to New York. What was the decision? I mean, half the campus was from New York. You know,
Yes.
anyhow.
Yes.
So
Half the campus was from New York. I idolized New York. My parents were ruling with like an iron fist from all the way across the country. You know what I mean? So, and I was generally an obedient kid, you know?
Yeah,
And so they said, don't go to New York. I didn't go to New York. You know, it was like, I went one time with my best friend, who was from Brooklyn, from Bed-Stuy. And she took me. My wallet was stolen. And then that was the end of that. My parents were like, see, we told you, you know? My father.
Manhattan keeps
oh my
on making
God.
it. Brooklyn keeps on taking
Wow.
it.
I mean, listen, it was just, but I idolized New York. And so I absolutely had my sights set on moving to New York after graduating. But I was supposed to go to med school. So I was in a crisis. I didn't have a plan. And my parents were like, well, you have to go to school. Like you're going to do that. And I was like, okay, well, how about I take a year to get all of these like emotions out? You know, like I just want to like get all that childish stuff out. I'm going to do it in New York. And they were like, okay, you could do that. We're not supporting that though. So no money for you.
So all that childish stuff. What is that?
Oh, well, I thought it meant like just going out. Like,
Okay.
You know what I mean?
You want to party?
Yeah, I wanted to party. I wanted to like live in New York by myself. You know, I just told my parents the childish stuff so that they would think I would get that all in my system and then go to med school and become a serious doctor somewhere, you know, some surgeon. But I definitely had other plans. I had one friend who had graduated the year before me, and she was getting her MFA from Columbia. And so she had an apartment just above like 126. There was this restaurant called Floridita that was right on the corner.
You're very familiar
Right?
with it.
Yo, Floridita saved my life, man. Let me tell you something. When I tell you I had no money, I had no money. No money.
$5.
Listen, no, less than. Let me tell you what I would do. There was I wish I knew where she was now. There was this woman who worked there. You know, she worked behind the counter. She worked in like the area. They sold the rolls, you know, like by the entrance of the back of the entrance. And I would go back there, and she would sell me. I don't know if she was supposed to do it or not, but she would sell me a roll for 10 cents. And I would take that roll, and I had temp jobs, and so I would go to whatever job I had that day, and I would drink the tea or the hot chocolate and eat my roll. And sometimes that would be the only meal for the day.
While you're clubbing, while you got no money, you're just trying to you're couch surfing. Is this dark cloud, this bit of anxiety about you realizing you're not going to go to medical school, and I've got to talk to mom and dad about this?
Yeah.
Is that just
that was
head?
over my head for sure. But I maybe counterintuitively, it was also making me live very fast. You know, because I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna come to an end." So I've gotta like, you know what I mean? I gotta make the best of this. So I was living really, really fast. But also, trying to make anything secure, because I knew the only way to get out of it is if I actually had a plan for something else. Divine intervention happened one day when the temp agency said Spike Lee's office had called. He had fired his assistant, and he needed someone to come answer the phones. And I was going to go in and do the best damn answering of phones that I could do.
And this is at the DDB
yes.
ad agency.
Yeah. He had a joint venture with DDB. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I think the only reason I got that job was because I was black. You know what I mean? I was like the only black person at the temp agency. So they were like, send the black one. You know what I mean? Which was great. The only time being black has helped me. But anyway, Spike now, he loves to tell the story that in the first few days, he was writing Bamboozled at the time. And he knew I was an English major, and I was a pretty uppity English major, felt like I knew everything. And he was like, fine, here, read this, I think as a challenge. And I think he thought it would take me a couple of weeks. Well, no, I went home, and like everything else, I'm very intense about it, and I read it in 2 days. And by the way, when he said read it, I heard make edits. That's what I heard him say. That's not what he said. And when I came back to the office, by the way, I made the edits in red pen. This is legit. Like, why? Why would you do that? So he comes in the office, and I'm like, oh, I finished reading the script. Here you go. And first he looks at me like, nah, you couldn't have. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Yeah, I read the whole thing. And I made some edits to it. And that's when I knew I'd made a mistake. He was like, you made edits to my script? And I was like, oh, was I not supposed to do that? That was what I was supposed to do? Like, you didn't want that, But he
reaches for the white out.
Right, exactly. He storms up into his office. He slams the door. I definitely knew I was fired that day. So I just grabbed my bag, and I was sitting there waiting, for him to come say, like, get the, out of here. And I think he made me wait a long time on purpose. And he came out probably, a few hours later. It felt like a year later, but he came out a few hours later, and he was like, you made some good suggestions. You should stay here. And I was like, I have a job. I finally have a job.
Yeah. And was that the job that put the battery in your back to tell your parents
that was it.
Plans are changing?
Plans are changing. Plus, I, dropped Spike's name heavy. I called Dad. I was like, Dad, I have a job with Spike Lee.
Yeah. What did he say?
And he was like, so I know I'm going to become a doctor. I was like, no, it's a Spike. Is he going to put you in film to be doctor? I was like, no.
One more.
Exactly, right. You're getting no money from me. And I was like,
So what quirky run-ins did you have with his, aside from this moment, because, Spike is beloved, particularly, in the last, with Black Klansman, what he did for the Netflix series with She's Gotta Have It. And he's just like super on top right now. But, a lot of people don't know, like, Spike has his moments where he could be a little bit of an asshole.
Oh, man. Yeah. He likes his way, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And he loves to teach tough lessons. Probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, or one of the quirks, was that I, at one point, quit working at the agency because I thought I wanted to be a writer. And he was like, you don't know anything about writing. He was like, you think you do, but you don't. He's like, you're a good editor. You're not a great writer. So I quit. And it was terrible. 2 months of sitting in cafes, I was wearing a black T-shirt, thought I was, super cute. I was doing it for the looks, not really for the work of it. And I called him and I was like, okay, maybe you were right. I would like to have lunch so we can talk about it because I need some advice and, maybe you can let me come back a little bit so I could make some more. It's a little part-time basis so I could get some money.
Temp status.
And so I told him I wanted to go to lunch and we make the date. We go to lunch. During lunch, he gives me great advice. Gave me like the big brother or the older cousin talk, harsh, but it was all right stuff. And the bill comes and he looks at it. I was like, I definitely don't have enough money in my account, to cover this bill. There's no way. But I was looking at him like, yo, isn't he gonna pay for this? I can't believe, he was my boss. He should pay for it. And plus, I make no money. He should pay for it. He looked at it and he pushed it to me. And he was like, you asked me to lunch. I gave you great advice. You're going to pay for this lunch. And I was like, but thank God for delayed technology at the time, because I put down my card. I knew that joint was like going to bounce like a mother. You know what I mean? But like I put down my little debit card. They ran it. I signed it. We ran up out of there. I still don't think it cleared, but whatever, it's fine. All those years later, I really appreciated that lesson, which was just like, you gotta pay for the advice.
Word.
Yeah.
After a series of jobs at different places, you end up at Pepsi.
Yeah.
It was your idea to bring Beyonce in for the halftime show at the Super Bowl?
Yes,
Can you tell us how that went down?
My relationship with Beyonce started actually back when I first started working with Spike. Because, like I said, I was out in the street, out in the club. Many people don't remember that when she decided to leave Destiny's Child, it was like people panned her. And so I think now people look at it and think, oh, that must have been easy for her. And she was always like on top. But at the time, she wasn't. She had played Carmen in an MTV special called Carmen, the Hip Opera. When Spike asked around the office to all the young people what they were interested in and what they thought was great, I mentioned that. And he took that idea and created a commercial for Pepsi in which Beyonce starred as Carmen. And it was her first deal with Pepsi, was her first big, endorsement deal. And so after I got to Pepsi, I was involved in 5 deals with her. And the last one was the one with the Super Bowl, with the NFL. The reason why that was really important is, again, I think, we forget a little bit of history in that the last Black woman to have been on that stage was Janet Jackson.
And her nipple was exposed.
Yes, the wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah.
And it was just such a win because there were several things that, of course, were also complicating the matter. One was that, having to prove the fact that a Black woman could take center stage by herself with no secondary act, and hold the audience. There was a real argument about that.
That's
and
wild.
Whether or not that the audience I was watching the Super Bowl would be engaged. The second thing is that year was Barack Obama's inauguration, and Beyonce sang at his inauguration. She used a backing track, and people said that she couldn't sing, that it was like a scandal. It was going into that Super Bowl with that scandal, and the NFL was, again, very upset about the fact that not only were they nervous about the fact that she could carry the audience or not, but now we have this singing scandal, and Beyonce does what she does best. And at the press conference leading up to the Super Bowl, she asked everyone to rise.
Would you guys mind standing?
We walk in. By the way, no one really had an idea about what she was going to do. I definitely thought I was going to get fired. Because I was like, what the woman going to do now? She sang the anthem a cappella.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming?
And it was just, maybe one of the most beautiful musical performances I've ever heard. She sang the hell out of the song. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then she went on the stage and destroyed it. It was just beautiful, and it really felt like such a win because it was like, listen, guys, again, the emotion and our connectivity as human beings is what's going to win, not the fact that she's Black and will people connect to her. What a crazy thought.
That particular Beyonce deal, as you described, was a major win, but it also coincided with what would become a colossal loss for you personally.
Yes.
At the time, your husband was diagnosed
with
cancer. You say that he gave you the gift of urgency, and you've spoken about how that informed your career. Mm-hmm. But I'm just curious how that affected your relationship with him and what things you did together urgently in that time.
Oh, well, 2013, it was really pivotal. The high of the high with Beyonce at the Super Bowl. I felt invincible. We were just, we were living in Manhattan, just feeling great. And then in May, he was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma, which is a rare cancer. By October, we knew that he was not going to survive the cancer. The decision at that point was whether or not he was going to continue treatment, or stop, and we would just try to live every day. He wanted to do everything that he could, that he'd always waited to do. I, on the other hand, was trying to gather the past. And the urgency, or the gift of the urgency, was that every day he would wake up and there'd be something else that was wrong, because he was losing functionality. And so whatever we could do that day, literally whatever he could physically do, we would then make the decision and do that thing. And by the way, sometimes it was simple things, sometimes it was the, going to our favorite little cafe one last time, taking that drive in Edgewater, where you can see Manhattan.
Yeah, in Jersey.
And that, it's such a beautiful drive. I never appreciated it. We stopped at this little lookout point, and he proposed all over again. Just one last time.
That's beautiful.
And it just really enforced for me the fact that not only do I live urgently, but I don't wait for the experiences. Often we say in 6 months I'm going to do this, or in 2 years when I have enough money, I'm going to da-da-da-da. No, it's why are you going to wait? Just do it.
He passes, and I don't know how shortly after or how long after you get approached and solicited by Jimmy Iovine to join Beats in Los Angeles. Now it's a complete change of scenery.
Yeah.
Was it helpful to change locations with your daughter after?
Absolutely. Because everything in Manhattan reminded me of him.
Mm-hmm.
And what Jimmy did, which was, 3 months after Peter died.
Was he aware of that?
Who, Jimmy?
Was Jimmy aware that
he was
your
not
husband...
aware before we had lunch.
Uh-huh. So he's coming at you just because
he's coming
thinks,
at me you're a
you're
great marketer.
Yeah.
He wanted someone he was building Beats music on top of Beats Electronics, right? And he wanted a marketer who understood, big brands, who also understood the intricacies of pop culture and put those two things together. And so he was just interested in me. And then I sat on his couch and I was like, this is the worst time of my life. I was like, I'm not only afraid, I am very sad. And I don't know that I have the joy, to actually bring to the work that you will need. And he was instrumental to me anyway in my healing, really. 'Cause he said, well, if you sit in New York and think about the past, you will be stuck there. And he was like, you need something to draw you into the future. And I was like, well, I don't even know about tech, and I don't know how to do that. And he was like, well, I don't either. Yeah. He's like, I don't know. He's like, but what better way to live than to go figure it out?
Yeah.
He was like, do that. He's like, focus on something else. Focus on something you don't know, that you haven't experienced before, a new thing in a new city. And I was like, yeah. That totally makes sense. I literally left his house, called my boss, and quit my job.
Mm.
Currently, you're at Endeavor, which is a little bit different from the marketing jobs you've had before. Am I right?
Bit.
So can you just describe what you're doing there exactly?
So it feels actually like the culmination of a career, this Endeavor job, because Endeavor is the parent company of WME, which is the largest talent agency in the world, IMG, which represents a lot of fashion and sports, Miss Universe, the UFC, Professional Bull Riders Association, which is based in Pueblo, Colorado, by the way. And it allows me to touch all kinds of silos, in pop culture. I get to do a bunch of stuff with people that I've always dreamt about partnering with, and helping to navigate their next evolution of their careers and their brands. So I'm really excited about that.
Do you get to pick and choose the projects you work on?
Sort of, yeah.
I'm just curious about the Papa John specifically.
Oh, yes.
So the CEO, so Papa John positions itself as a company as being against the NFL players that were taking a knee. Is that right? Or was it the CEO particularly?
The CEO
Wasn't the former CEO?
Yes,
right.
John Schnatter.
And he used some rather improper language
the
describing
N-word.
black people. Right.
Correct.
Right. And then he was
ousted.
gone.
Yes. Fired.
You come in,
Yes.
and it's your job to do some damage control? Sort
No.
of? No?
So here's the thing is that I think, that's what it looks like on the surface. What I have, good or bad, fallen into is what I call like corporate activism, because my job is not just my job. Because I happen to be a Black woman, I also end up taking on the responsibilities of driving diversity and inclusion in almost every company I'm at, whether it was Apple or, of course, at Uber, and now at Endeavor, where I'm able to do it for other brands. And so when I first heard about this opportunity, I turned it down because I was like, I'm not working with that guy. No way.
Yeah.
And then he was fired. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now maybe
interesting.
there is a chance here. Because to me, there's a couple of things that need to happen. When companies face that kind of situation, they have to do everything in their power, right, to essentially rehabilitate. Rehabilitation is not just surface. It can't just be the brand. It's not a new commercial you put on air. There's something wrong with your culture. And there's something wrong with the way that you are operating, which would allow such behavior. Now,
So what do you do?
listen,
Say, fire 500 people?
No. I think it's so much bigger than that. It's things like economic advancement. So if you have franchisees and you have franchises that are not diverse currently, then how can you create a pipeline to allow for more diversity in franchise communities? I mean, there are Black and brown owners of Papa John's who have put their life savings into these stores and who are losing them. I'm like, that we can't have that happen. And also it's like you've got 700 franchises. How many of them are owned by Black and brown people? It's like this company can now have a real position in creating a pipeline that will allow for more diversity in those lines. Women's empowerment. How many women are in their executive suite? Not very many. So how can we diversify that? There are some real things that need to happen culturally and structurally in the company that will then allow for the rehabilitation. So that's what I'm doing.
Dope.
Amazing.
Much love, yo.
Thank you.
Let's take a little breather, and we're going to jump right back.
Okay.
20th Century Fox presenting The Hate You Give, a new film about hope and standing up for what is right. Based on a critically acclaimed New York Times bestseller by Angie Thomas. Starring Amanda Stenberg as Star with Regina Hall, Russell Hornsby, Issa Rae, KJ Apa, Algie Smith, Sabrina Carpenter, Common, and Anthony Mackie. Find your voice. Change the world. The Hate You Give in select theaters October 5th and everywhere October 19th.
This message comes from NPR sponsor CBS. Mondays, fast cars, beaches, and aloha shirts mean one thing: Magnum PI on CBS. Thomas Magnum is a private investigator with a tendency to wreck expensive cars. Jay Hernandez is Magnum. Check out interviews with the cast, trailers, and sneak peeks. Go to cbs.com/shows and scroll down to Magnum PI. Don't miss Magnum PI, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, 8 p.m. Central on CBS. Oh, it's the sound of the drums. Boom, boom, bang, bong, boom, boom. Congas and bongos and timbales. That only means one thing. It's time for the impression session.
And what we're going to do here is super simple.
Okay.
We're going to play two tracks. 90.
Yeah. Are you up on that
Amazing.
record?
No, I'm not.
See,
It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, if
She
Like-
likes Ultramagnetic. This
No,
is
no,
a
this
great
is
moment
huge.
in hip
This is
hop.
huge.
It's like,
if
I immediately was like, what?
if I could walk out of this
What?
experience
What?
with you,
It's amazing.
knowing that you might become an Ultramagnetic MC's fan.
You feel like
I'm
your
winning.
job. Yeah,
I'm winning.
okay.
I might feel like you felt after Beyonce did
I mean, right.
the Super Bowl halftime show.
Yes, this is the winning moment.
But honestly, Ultramagnetic is a colossally important group. They came out with an album called
Critical Beatdown.
Critical Beatdown, and it's just revolutionary lyrically in terms of production, sampling,
Sonically.
etc. Yeah,
Amazing.
and I like it more than California Love.
How do you feel?
I actually love this because I was not aware, and I love learning new things. But I really love Tupac. Like, I love Tupac a lot. I find it like, I'd love to find the history of things and understanding where things come from. Again, part of the curiosity about how things are made and origins and things like that. Yeah, I love it.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Bozoma, that's our show. I just thank you for coming through.
Thank you.
So what's good with Stretch and Bobbito? We've had an amazing time with you, and
Super dope time. And to all our Wesleyan grads out
Yes.
there, yo, we repping out here. all
Correct.
right?
West Tech,
Word
stand up.
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is our show. This podcast was produced by Michelle Lands, edited by Jordana Hochman and Nigeri Eaton, and our executive producer is Abby O'Neill. Music by composer Ellie Escobar and our own Robertino Garcia.
If you like the show, you can find more at npr.org or wherever you get your podcasts, including bonus video content on Spotify on Fridays. Thanks to Spotify for their support. While you're at it, please go to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, and subscribe. That's how we know you are listening.
You can follow us on Twitter at Stretch and Bob or Instagram at Stretch and Bobbito.
Word up!
Peace!